Of all my tank sizes, there's one I'd rather die than choose again.
Unfavorable tank. I cursed the day you were forged.
But there are pros and cons about all my tanks, and I actually love most of them. But let's talk about what I love about my tanks, what I don't like, and what they're good for.
I just got lost, searching everywhere I thought you would be, but you're only in my dreams.
No, just kidding. Like, we're gonna start off with the coolest tanks first? Come on, man. Still pretty sweet to watch though, right? No, I think we might as well start small and work our way up to the big tanks. Like with this dinky little thing. It's my little 5-gallon cheapie from Petco. I have a 10-gallon also, not present in this video. Both are pretty much used for the same thing, quarantine tanks. I got them for those rare occasions when I have a sick fish who's small enough to just need a tank like this size. What I like about the idea is that if I need to medicate, I can use less medication, which saves money, which means I can spend that money on really important things, like more tanks and more fish. You could use one of these for a betta or some other type of tiny fish, but seriously, who wants to be stuck in a tank this size? A 10-gallon? Yeah, maybe. There's not really much else to like about a tank this size. Oh, there is one thing though. It's easy to find a spot for in the house. I used to use a 29-gallon as my main quarantine tank for most of my fish, but now I use these 20-gallon longs from, again, Petco, nice and cheap. I didn't need all the extra height from the 29-gallon because that's pretty much what you're getting when you get that extra 9 gallons. It's all in the height. These shorter tanks make it easier for me to reach inside the tank if I need to, and it just isn't as obvious in the house because they're not really beautiful tanks if I'm using them for quarantines. They're not as inconspicuous, and they're not as cheap to medicate as a 5 or 10 gallon, but they're still pretty inconspicuous and they're still pretty cheap to medicate. Easy to set up, easy to tear down and store. But you could easily set up a 20 gallon like this for some smaller fish like a pistogramma. You could even make a gorgeous planted tank out of one. Just make sure your fish don't need a lot of swimming space. Yeah, even some smaller fish like neons need more swimming room than a tank this size can give them. Doesn't seem like it, but it's true. The 20 gallon is now my go-to for quarantine tanks unless I have a really big fish. I also have this 23 gallon, which is great also, just different dimensions. It's rimless, so if you're a planted tank guru, then you can keep twigs and plants sticking out of the water into the air for a really classy look. The lidless thing really isn't working for me. I could easily get a lid for it, but I really don't care about how this tank looks. Its sole purpose is to grow out my tire track eel longoria, for San Quentin. That's my biggest tank. All my plants died in here because I'm basically the
Plant Antichrist.
And filling this up daily with water isn't my top priority. Really looks like shit at this point. Mineral deposits all around the exposed area. I've really given up trying to make this one look nice, but hey, it's just a grow out tank. Stop judging me. Hey, I know you're still judging me.
Subscribe or someone dies. Ding ding.
That brings me to the one size I would never buy again unless it was my very last option. This is my grow out quarantine tank for when I get bigger shipments of fish, or if there's a mild illness or someone got their ass beat by another inmate. Right now, it has all my African cichlids I just received a few weeks ago from Andre Pitre. Check him out. If you'd like to see Andre's stocking list, then just click on the link in the video description. So there's really nothing wrong with this tank, and you might have one and love it. It's the 55-gallon aquarium, and it will definitely serve the purpose of a 4-foot long tank for most fish that need a 4-footer or less. But here's the thing. The standard dimensions of a 55-gallon are 48 by 13 by 21. Okay, fine. But a 75-gallon tank measures 48 by 18 by 21. Identical except the depth. To me, that extra 5 inches makes a huge difference in not only how the tank looks, but in how much extra room the fish have to swim around in. A 55 is just too narrow for my taste. A 75 barely costs any more and gives you more tank for your money. It won't cost much more to buy the equipment either. Lights, filters, heaters, barely any difference at all. And unless you're sticking this thing in a closet or something, the extra 5 inches probably won't make much of a difference to you space-wise. So I would definitely pass on a 55 unless there was absolutely no way I could make a 75 work.
saw crows fly through the fog, but it was just my mind playing tricks fly by. My compass knows when I am wrong. I let it be my guide, keeping the fire in my eyes.
I'm going to combine my next two into the same category. They're my 72-gallon rimless from Landon and my 75-gallon from Aquarium. The 72 has my Black Nasty babies, and the 75 Attica has my Mbuna. I love this tank. It's small enough that you can fit it almost anywhere. I've never had to worry about extra floor support for a tank this size. You might, so don't blame me if your floor starts to sag, but I have no worries in my house. It's also big enough that you can start to get some of the cool bigger fish, and to me, bigger fish are really the better ones, like the redhead tapajos. I still wouldn't want to go much bigger than a 5 or 6 inch fish in a tank this size, even though you'll find some people with much larger fish in here. In some cases, if you have a single bigger fish in a tank like this, it might work out okay. But in most cases, I'd still want to go up a size or two for a bigger fish. If you're wondering why the heck I have some Black Nasties that get up to 14 inches in a 72 gallon, well, it's because it's just temporary. They'll need a bigger tank pretty soon. These 4-foot tanks are the smallest size you'll want for some cool species like Mbuna. I like that both my 72 and 75 are pretty easy to maintain. If I do a water change, it's usually a pretty quick process. They don't cost a fortune to buy and set up, and they can make a nice aesthetic contribution to your home. They're a noticeable size too, an eye catcher, and I like that.
And everything we see and everything we feel drops into an endless space that time can't erase, it stops. It's the only thing we have, the only thing left to grasp, and the only thing we have to lose.
Finally, for the fun tanks. Once you start getting into a 180 or larger, this one here is a 180, you start feeling extremely lucky. A 180 just makes an impact, man. 72 by 24 by 24. You see this and you know something powerful's going on. This is when your friends start to notice that something's off about you. Do fish people even have friends? I don't know. If you own a tank this size, you can do a lot more with it, and your stocking options go through the roof. I really love how long the tank is. It's an extra 2 feet over the 75 and 55. The fish love it, they get to explore a lot more territory. The extra depth and height aren't to be overlooked either. You can almost sleep in this thing, which my wife has, out of the kindness of her heart, offered up as an option for me on numerous occasions. The extra room to decorate also helps you achieve an interesting look more easily than a smaller tank, in my opinion. That's not to say that smaller tanks are boring looking, it's just you can do a lot more with the decor in a tank like this. I mean, check out that branch. It's almost 6 feet long itself. As far as price goes, this is where you really start to feel it. It's going to cost you a lot more to get into a tank this size. The decor, lights, and all the other equipment is also going to set you back more. I have just one FX6 canister filter on here, which is just over $300, but I should have another smaller polishing filter on here too. This is a great sized tank, but you need to make sure your floor can support the weight. These tanks are heavy when filled with sand and water. If you can't do a 180, a 125 is also a good option. It's still 6 feet long, and you can actually get them at PetSmart. But I'd probably go custom just for the added security of knowing a good builder made it.
The summer rains have gone, August comes along, and its gold fills the air.
Alcatraz is my 240-gallon tank. Super big, 96 by 24 by 24. Identical to the 180 with the exception of an extra 2 feet in length, which makes a difference. What's not to like about a tank this size? If your options for stocking really opened up with the 180, just imagine what you could do with the 240. Mine sits right in the living room, which has enough support to hold an incredibly heavy tank like this. It's so beautiful, and I like how I can see it whenever I'm home, right in the living area, so I can be watching TV and just pop a look over and see my fish. Or I can just look at my fish and ignore the TV. It has peacocks and haps in it, which are African cichlids. Beautiful fish. You could really do some cool escaping if you had a different type of fish in your 240 than I have in mine. These guys are pretty much a wrecking crew for plants and anything else you want to stick in the sand. They'll uproot and move all kinds of decor around. Look, my protective mesh baggie fell off the pothos roots I had dangling in the tank for nitrate control, and these nut jobs devoured those roots almost instantly. This aquarium takes more time to maintain, of course, especially water changes, wiping down the panels, and maintaining the 3 FX6 canister filters I have hooked up to it. A 180 is cool, but this size is a huge step up from one of those.
In the space I rest, in my loneliness, this empty heart is oceans apart from you. In the moments past, when our future lay among the stars, when I long to hold you.
And speaking of a huge step up, this is San Quentin, my 435-gallon American cichlid tank. I'm in love with this tank. And yes, if I wasn't already married, I'd marry it. That's how much I love it. We're looking at a 120 by 30 by 28. I didn't go any taller than 28 inches because I didn't want to have to struggle to reach if I needed to grab something from the bottom of it. I have curiously long arms and I still have to stretch as it is. Oh hey, guess what? It weighs more than a Prius, like 2 of them. I can do just about whatever I want with a tank this size. I love how long this thing is. The inmates can really swim around, and the bigger boys like the Oscar and the True Parrot will be able to turn around very easily when they get to be full size, which can be up to 14 inches for some of those. One thing I didn't mention about the other tanks is that when you get this much water volume, your tank can deal with some of the problems a lot better. There's more leniency. You're more likely to have no problems if you skip a water change than you might if you skip one on your 20-gallon. There's just so much water to dilute any contaminants. I don't like how long it takes to do a water change or cleaning the filter, but that's the price you pay for having a 10-footer. Well, the Benjamins you need for a tank this size are also the price you pay, don't get me wrong. Not cheap at all. There's nothing cheap about this tank. But oh so worth it. If my house caught on fire, they'd have to drag me away because I'd be wrapping my curiously long arms around this thing. My one true prized possession. Subscribe if you like. Let me know what your favorite tank size is in the comments. So long for now.